Well, the midterm elections, we're into the home stretch, just 14 days till the votes are counted. And today we have a new poll out in the Montana U.S. House race. This is the Montana Television Network, Montana State University poll. And the poll shows that Greg Gianforte, the incumbent, is favored by 47.6% of those polled. Kathleen Williams, 40.1%. Eleanor Swanson, 2.4%. Don't know. The undecided's 8.6%. I'm joined now by Dr. David Parker, our MTN political analyst, along with Mike Dennison, our chief political reporter. Dr. David Parker, this is really our first glance at what's happening in this key U.S. House race. Your response, again, over 2,000 respondents to this mail-in survey.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this poll, there's a bit more undecideds. That's not expected. I think people know a little bit less about Kathleen Williams. The most important thing that strikes me here in this poll, Kathleen Williams also has a high amount of the Democrats in her camp, 95%, and of course Jon Tester had 98% in the Senate race. If you look over at the Republicans, Gianforte is doing better among the Republican base. He has 88% support. The don't knows are largely concentrated among the independents, and the lead that Kathleen Williams has among independents is much lower. It's more around 12 points. Which is very different from the nearly 30-point advantage for Jon Tester. For her to do well, she's going to have to get that lead up big time for her to have a chance in this race, because this lead is outside our margin of error. So we are confident that Greg Gianforte has the lead in this race.
Mike Dennison, what jumps out at you? You've seen the numbers. If you peel back all these numbers and dig a little deeper, what jumps out at you?
Well, I think if you look at the how this breaks down on the crosstabs, the various groups of voters we look at, that I think it's a pretty steep hill for Kathleen Williams to climb to actually pull an upset and win this race. And I say that because I look at, for instance, women and men voters. We looked at Tester yesterday doing quite well among women. Kathleen Williams is doing better among women than Gianforte, but not by a large amount. It's because she hasn't really nailed down that demographic, which she has to have if she has any chance of winning. And also look at a couple other demographic groups in the voters by education, for instance. She's doing quite well among the people who have college degrees and advanced degrees, but of course that's a minority of voters in Montana. Amongst all the other people in Montana of education levels, Gianforte has a substantial lead. And also you look at age groups as well. The only demographic where Williams is doing well is those under 40, and that's the group that historically turns out the least among all the voters out there. So I think she's looking at these results and thinking, I've got a lot of work to do.
Dr. Parker, what could swing it in Kathleen Williams' favor? A lot of things are going to have to go right. Just the president coming back and bringing up Greg Gianforte's assault on the reporter had to have at least energized her camp a little bit. What do you think?
I think a couple things are key. First of all, remember the scenario that we have here. We're basically thinking that this electorate is going to look like 2016, but we know in a midterm election, off-year election, the president's party gets punished. So we should see more Democratic voters than we saw in 2016. So what Kathleen Williams is basically need to see is those Democrats need to show up, those younger voters have to show up. What's interesting to me is you look at married women. Now, 47% of them support Greg Gianforte, 40% support Williams, but 11% undecided. And I'm curious if the reason they're undecided is they're a little bit cool towards Greg Gianforte. And I think mentioning the assault and the advertising campaign that Kathleen Williams has on right now could perhaps move those voters into her camp. But Kathleen to win, everything's got to go right. She needs to have high Democratic voter turnout. She needs to have those independents move in her direction. And then she's got to hope for some Republicans either move towards her or don't show up.
And Mike Dennison, this seat has been in Republican hands for so long now. It looks like it's still, they've got a solid grip on this House seat.
Well, it looks that way. Like, as you mentioned, it's been 24 years since a Democrat has won this race. I think one of the reasons why there haven't been the strongest of Democratic candidates running, and it doesn't get as much attention or money as the U.S. Senate race. But what David said there at the end, I would absolutely agree with it. The two things that I think are key here for Williams, if she has any chance at all, is a big turnout from women and also the independents, and also more of the independents, undecideds, have to fall her way in a big way. And you know, that's kind of a big roll of the dice for that to happen. But at the same time, you know, Williams did pull a bit of an upset in the primary. I think that, you know, that's an outside possibility here, though. But if I'm Greg Gianforte and looking at these numbers, I would feel pretty confident going into the race at this point.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Coming up later in the week, we're going to divulge what our poll says about those very close initiative races, Initiative 185 and 186. That's coming up later in the week. Thanks again.
Thank you.